My name's Diana Valle. My firm is called the Valle Law Firm, and I focus mainly on three areas: consumer, bankruptcy, and family law.
Wonderful. And can you give us a little bit of a brief history about yourself and how you got into law?
Sure. So, a brief history. Okay, well, let me think how to make it brief. So, what got me interested initially, I wanted to be a detective because I like investigating. But then in college, I was told I had to be a police officer first, and I could never see myself as a police officer. I just don't feel like I'm physically intimidating enough.
Oh,
Um, so then I was thinking about what do I do. I knew I wanted to do something. I was a criminal justice major, so I was in that field. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do anything in the criminal field, but I liked investigating. So at that point, I just went to work for a firm doing intellectual property as a legal assistant, and something just told me just go for law school because I found it quite intimidating at first. I did take a class in college. It was a prosecutor taught it, and it was probably the most difficult class in criminology. Not that
mhm.
it's a very difficult major, but it was the most difficult one. So I was thinking, I'm a very abstract person, very artistic. So I thought, how am I going to be analytical? It just seemed like it wasn't part of who I was.
Yeah.
But I just went for it. I took the LSATs and then I went to law school. Um, what I think I found more interesting about the law was going into court because let's backtrack a little bit. When I
Yeah.
was 17, I did shadow an attorney as part of a high school program. And when we went into
Wow.
the courtroom, it sort of was like this halo thing, like kind of had, I don't want to say heaven opening up at that, oh,
Yeah.
when I walked into the court and I was like, I like being here. So that was sort of like a reference in the back of my
Mm.
mind with the law thing. And then going into law school, it was a little bit difficult actually studying and focusing on the aspect, like the books and stuff like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
But the practice of it, like going into court, anytime I was in a courtroom, I felt very comfortable. So I'm not sure how that works because you do have to do the reading and the writing, and that was probably not where my like passions really like were. It was more in the performance of it. But eventually practice and practice. I found out that being passionate about an argument and writing is actually is just as interesting when you're really passionate about it. So yeah, that's kind of how I got interested in it. And then I had a bankruptcy professor. I didn't really find I had no interest in bankruptcy, or nobody really told me, hey, bankruptcy is interesting. But I just took the class and I got into bankruptcy. I found it interesting because it's kind of challenging. It's very complicated,
Yeah.
and sometimes you do have to go to court. So that's kind of how I got into the law. Yeah,
That's awesome. No,
yeah,
you've had quite the little journey there, especially at 17, shadowing.
yeah.
That's
We just I think in high school, I don't know. They just said, "Oh, do you?" I really forgot what it was. It was some kind of job program, but it wasn't really like I shadowed him a bunch of times. It was just one
one
time.
time. Still,
So
that's pretty cool that you got
yeah.
that opportunity and it's such a young
Yeah, I don't even
age.
know how it came up. Maybe I was I taking a law class in high school or something like that. But
Destiny.
anyways,
Yeah.
maybe
I love
destiny,
it.
right?
And then now what inspired you to establish your law firm and how was your personal background influence to having your own firm?
So, I realized that I wasn't really sure if I wanted to I guess when you're in law school, you're either there's like I guess the most popular path are people trying to go to a big firm
Hmm.
and make partner. I just didn't I know that's what everybody else wanted to do and it's very competitive. I just didn't really feel that.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I felt like I wasn't really going to have creative control, and being a sort of artistic person in my core, I like to create. So I felt like I'm not really going to, I feel like I'm going to be somebody's slave,
Oh,
and I don't want that,
no, no, no.
So, you know, so I just decided I'm just going to go and do my own practice. And what I did was I didn't shadow. I cold called because I wanted to get bankruptcy experience. I found bankruptcy lawyers, like solo practitioners. And I said, do you need anybody? Do you need anybody? And somebody was like, sure. This He's already passed. Rest in peace. But
Oh, rest in peace.
but
Yeah.
yeah, he's like, okay, come in. He gave me a math test. So it's kind of he was from Puerto Rico. And he's like, okay, yeah, I like the initiative you took. And so I learned a bit of bankruptcy. And it was just him and a paralegal. So I think that was like, oh, okay, I learned some bankruptcy. I could go out, file bankruptcies, and I just kind of made it very simple in my mind. But it wasn't. It wasn't simple, like
No.
running a
Yeah,
business.
yeah.
But that's kind of where I realized I just want to do this like on my own. I don't want to work for anybody
Yeah,
else.
I
So
love that. I love that you like strived for that and got to that point. And I think
yeah.
it's awesome that at a young age you also were just like going out there trying to find someone like, hey, could you use somebody? I would love, and the fact that he took a chance on you too and you're new, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and I just felt sort of like my personality didn't really fit. And this is kind of funny. I kind of felt like like Reese Witherspoon from Legally
Legally Blonde, I
Blonde.
love that movie.
Yeah, I not that I was all chippy like her, but I was very, how should I say? I wasn't like
Not the standard lawyer type, right?
right. I wasn't going into law school with this calculated plan of this. I'm going to do this, and that. I was just there to just kind of have the experience and learn
Yeah.
as I mean as best as I could.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. It was sort of that. It was sort of I don't know. I just felt this disconnect. It was probably a different environment. Probably not having a lot of confidence with people. That was probably the
Mm.
bigger issue, which is weird. In court, I had no issue, but when I had to negotiate with students, I was like, I couldn't. Yeah, I didn't have the confidence. It was really weird
That is a little
because
bit
people
weird,
go to
yeah.
court and they're like really scared, and I was like, "Psh, nothing, just natural to me.
Confident, yeah.
So I don't know, but I think I had to work on that.
Yeah.
So
It comes with time
yeah.
and the territory, you know. So just keep
But
at
yeah,
it.
that's kind of yeah, that's how I kind of got in. That's how I felt. Like I kind of diverged in a way. Sort of felt like I was on my own little island.
Yeah.
But it's kind of work. It's hard, kind of paving your own path. But I think in the long run, it's more fulfilling because you're doing what's true to you,
Yes,
right? So
absolutely. And you get to call the shots. So that's fun too,
exactly,
right?
it takes a while.
Mhm.
It didn't just. It took like in 2020 is when it sort of took off. So
Okay.
before that, I was doing other things to earn income, and I
Mhm.
worked with another attorney, Sandra Guzman.
Yeah, shout out Sandra.
Yeah, so I learned a lot from her with the family law. Actually, I got
That's
most of my experience working with her. She's
awesome.
very, laid back, very similar to my personality, not very high strung, but very caring about her clients and a very effective attorney.
Yeah.
So
I love it. Love that community you guys have together.
right.
And then your firm offers services in family law, bankruptcy, consumer protection, and foreclosure defense. How do you integrate these diverse areas to provide holistic solutions for your clients?
It's a kind of interesting. I didn't really plan, these areas. Like I never planned on getting into family law. I was interested in, well, I don't think it would have happened as a solo, but I like securities regulation. It's the only A I got in law school for some reason. I was like, oh, I like this area. But, anyways, I didn't plan these areas. They just kind of happened.
Yeah.
And no, they do just happen to intersect because in divorce, people may want to discharge things like their alimony, but they can't. But I think most people already know this because of the internet. You Google something and
Yeah.
you get a sort of like an answer. So I don't have people coming to me being clueless, like, oh, I thought I could get rid of child support, or not that that's a good thing. But they do intersect because it can get a little complicated, and
Mhm.
it's a little fun because you get to be a little creative with procedure. So consumer law is kind of its own thing. But yeah, the family law and the bankruptcy can actually intersect because sometimes, like I had a case, I was in a divorce and there was a bankruptcy, and actually the divorce couldn't proceed.
Oh.
And so it does intersect. It's very complicated, but they do happen to intersect. It wasn't planned, but I think it puts me in a very unique, like
Oh
a
yeah.
very niche, gives me a niche because not a lot of people are bilingual, and some people even say, oh, I want a female attorney. And so that aspect, and then kind of knowing the bankruptcy, the
Yeah.
family law, the consumer law, I find that combination not to be very common.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
I
No.
like I like uniqueness. So that, also adds to, I guess, liking, being where I am, being satisfied with these areas.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
kind of feel like you like the challenge though too, right?
I do. I constantly need challenges because if I'm not, you constantly, I think, need to grow and evolve. So if you don't, you're just stuck. Like,
Yeah.
and I couldn't, that's not fulfilling for me.
Yeah.
So,
I love that. And then personalized care and bilingual support, as you mentioned, are key aspects of your practice. Can you share a story where this approach made a significant difference for a client of yours?
Personalized approach.
Yeah.
So it's sort of I always do a personalized approach because it's just me. It's always actually personal. It's really just me right now. There is nobody else. So
Mm.
it can't be anything but
Anything
personal.
but, yeah.
Really. Yeah, I understand the question. It's like if you have staff answering the phone, how do you but it's really it's my number, it's my direct line or the intake line for people who want like a consultation. So it's pretty much always
Yeah.
personal.
Love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about maybe expanding more than just you or
I do. Yeah, I think about expanding. It's just that I'm very working for a lot of people, for solo practitioners, and just seeing that kind of coming and going, hiring, firing. I'm very selective, and I believe it's not quick, and I think you get the reward in the end to take your time to really bring people in instead of just I need a warm body
to
just to
fill
do
this
this and
spot?
that.
Yeah.
No, no, no. So I want to grow, but I think it just needs to take time. Um, I have actually am training somebody right now, and I
Cool.
think it's a pretty good find. So I'm have the support staff now that she's going to come in probably to be permanent. And an attorney, I probably imagine myself maybe boutique, small boutique, maybe no more than 10 attorneys.
Okay.
But I think it's just to me, it's kind of an organic process. And once my whole foundation is almost there, it's almost perfect. 'Cause I'm like a perfectionist. I want it because when people come in, I need a system so
Yes.
they don't get lost and communication.
Yeah.
It just starts to happen. I mean, I'm guilty of it. Sometimes you just
Same.
don't have time to return a call. But I try, I even go out of like regular hours to return calls if I have to, because sometimes you just realize, you don't want the quality to go down.
No,
So
yeah.
yeah, to expand, I just need to make sure the quality is going to be consistent. But I do plan on that.
Absolutely. No, and I think that's awesome because even though like it's good to set boundaries, it also shows your clients that you do care about them and you're like, "Oh, I really appreciate you like taking the time to talk to me after hours. I'm really sorry, but I felt like I really needed to talk to you about this because it was scaring me or whatever the reason might be." Right?
And people just want to know you care and you
Yeah.
haven't forgot about them. I mean, since law school, they always said the biggest complaint people have, or the bar complaint, is no communication,
Mm.
because they think you don't care, you're forgotten about them. And
Or they're
sometimes
just a
really,
number.
yeah, it's not true. It's just we're so bogged down. At least me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I'll try to get back or I'll apologize. But I have methods of trying to assure there's communication, like a text messaging line. That's always helpful because if I'm on a phone call, I can easily
Text.
text, and
Yeah.
so I try to maintain the communication as best as I
Yeah,
can.
I know that's super important too because like nowadays with like our phones and texting and social media, like if you don't like respond like almost right away, like you've lost that person. And that's just the way that our society is going with it.
It does, and it's a little bit difficult because you can't always
Yeah,
respond,
exactly.
especially if you start to grow and get more clients.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes more difficult, and a lot of administrative tasks end up taking so much
Oh
time.
yeah.
So right, so then you realize when you're actually running a business, the little things you didn't think about. Even like if you get papers from people, just like take the staples out, because you
Yeah.
actually don't know how much time if I have to unstaple things,
Yeah.
little things like that you kind of, and I tell people that I communicate, I don't think I've ever had anybody tell me, oh, take the staples out, but I'll
Yeah. They just
communicate
do. Yeah.
to clients, by the way, hey, this will save you time. If you're going to give
They
me
just do.
paper copies, take the staples
Yeah. I don't
out.
want them. Just don't staple them. Just give them to
Yeah,
me.
things like that. So I
Yeah.
try to be as very upfront with
Efficient.
people, and even the terms of representation, uh because I know it's a business, for a lot of other professionals, but sometimes, for example, if you have to get out of a case because, things didn't work out, it's usually financial reasons, because it's not cheap. Uh, it's like I don't like to do that. So I always, from the start, I like to, talk to people about a financial plan, because I don't like to like not finish a case.
Yeah.
It's just something internal to me. It may get in the way of business, just being business minded, but I'm not just business
Yeah.
minded.
No.
So
Love it. And then let's see, navigating chapter 7 and chapter 13 bankruptcy can be daunting. What common misconceptions do clients have, and how do you guide them through these challenging processes?
So, common misconceptions that people may have about bankruptcy is they may not understand, or they may not know, like, that they can keep property. I think sometimes they may think that, will they take, I don't know, they'll take miscellaneous things of their personal property. But it's not true. I think that it's just such a complicated field that I don't think people really actually know much about it other than what they read on the internet. And I mean, you can get now with AI, you can get pretty good summaries.
Yeah,
So I don't necessarily have people coming in to me clueless about
clueless.
things, but because it is very complicated, like AI is not going to give you,
You're specific.
yeah, and I hope it never does because, you still need the practice of going into a courtroom and being in front of a judge and knowing that, oh, these cases turn out this way. Like an AI is not really
No.
gonna, I don't know why I got into AI, but I think it's because people just go and Google things, right?
Yes, that's why.
But yeah, no, normally it's hard for me to really say. I think people just don't understand how complicated it can be and how useful it can be in some ways, because if you combine bankruptcy with maybe other areas of law, sometimes I do miscellaneous areas. Sometimes I defend people. I've gotten into defending like little small time employers that have no clue about wage and labor laws.
Mm,
And unfortunately, if you don't record your hours, your employees' hours, there's
it,
firms that will like get those attorneys fees. They'll charge 500, six hundred
dang.
dollars an hour. And it's like, oh, you don't have time records. And this person's like, oh, I work these amount of hours, and it
It's
may
like,
not be true, but it and it's put clients in a bad situation. So it's everybody's presumed to know the law, but we don't
yeah,
really know the law. It's sort of
yes.
this fiction that's kind of, and I mean, we don't want people to use that as an excuse,
No, no, no.
but that's why sometimes it's important to get an attorney and get some advice when you're getting
Absolutely.
into, not that I do like employer stuff a lot, but I've gotten into that sometimes. I think almost because of the community, a lot of times it's a language situation.
Yeah.
People who speak Spanish, they don't know who to trust. They feel like they don't know the system. So I sometimes get other areas because of that. And I'll help if I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome though. And one thing I liked about, and I told Sandra this too, is, and now I'm going to tell you, is that I think it's awesome that you guys have that bilingual touch to your business, because so many people I feel can get so intimidated not knowing, speaking English or reading it or understanding it, and to have somebody that's advocating for you that can help break down those processes and let you know, like, hey, it's okay. Because imagine not knowing the language and being like totally scared that you just need to file for bankruptcy. That alone can just be super scary.
Right. A lot of when you were asking me about misconceptions, what comes more to my mind is misconceptions in divorce. Like
Ah.
when you have a spouse, and I'm not saying it's man or women. Sometimes there's a power imbalance and somebody's a little bit more controlling than the other. And if they don't know anything, they're like, oh, my spouse told me this, that they can keep everything. And they just tell them these ridiculous
The
things.
most, yeah.
And I'm like, no, like relax. And sometimes I have to stop listening to your spouse.
I'm
Like,
the
listen
lawyer.
to
Yeah.
me. Yeah. Because they're just, they've been married for who knows how long. And so they're somehow, listening or believing that, oh, this person's right. And so you have to reassure them.
Yeah.
So that's what I actually find to be very common. I have to tell them these silly things that
That
their
are not
spouse is saying,
true.
absolutely not true. Because that's how, you get people signing things they shouldn't.
Oh,
Um, Not that that happens a lot. I think people are getting smarter and they're calling. "Oh, I don't know. My spouse gave me this. Should I sign it?" And I
good.
like when I get those because I'm like, you should or you shouldn't, before it's messy. Because once you sign something, it's a little messy to get out of.
Oh my goodness, right? That can be scary though, because you don't know and you think that, oh, if you don't sign this, like you said with the misconceptions, like with divorce, like if you don't sign this, I'm going to take away so and so. And so it's good to call somebody and be like, is it true that if I don't sign this, they're going to take away my kids? Like, should I sign? It's like, no, absolutely not. They're
Right.
just trying to scare and intimidate you.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
that's great. Thanks for touching on that.
Hmm.
Um, in today's marketplace, consumer rights are crucial. Could you discuss a case where your advocacy led to a positive outcome for a
Oh,
client
yes.
facing unfair business practices?
Yes, I remember one of those. So as part of the challenge that I do, I know I don't want to say that I know, but I have this notion. I may not be. It may just be my gut sense
Intuition.
or
Yeah.
intuition, as you call it, that not a lot of attorneys are quick to appeal things. because it is a lot of work, and I don't even like I never even like writing that much. So I think it's more of the challenge for me, and even though it's like, oh, I got to write this thing, it's just I've done quite a few appeals and I've gotten kind of the idea of it. Appealing something is great. I mean, assuming that it's like legitimate.
Yeah.
So with the consumer question you were asking me, I had this case where um, this lady came to me. She had a car, and there were mice in the car.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, there were mice in the car, and it's kind of complicated. I'll try to simplify it.
Okay.
But she said, there's mice in the car. I didn't know there were mice in the car, and there's a smell, so there was a smell. They cleaned the car, and they were kind of rude with the situation, and so she lost trust. I think one of the employees, like, cursed at her husband. I
Oh
guess they were
no.
picking up the car. Yeah, and so at that point, the relationship soured. So she came to me, and the interesting situation about that is that I did not. It was not until trial, until I had to go print a few documents, that I actually found what won the case. The whole preparation before was actually probably not going to win the case, because the issue is whether, see, with consumer protection, the thing about that is crucial is that at that time that you are going into the transaction, you are there's some misrepresentation. You're induced, right? Like, oh, this TV has this quality.
Mm.
Oh, okay, so I'm going to buy it, like that. Not
Ah,
that, oh, I bought the TV, it is what it is, but then you deceive me about something later.
later.
I mean, it's usually at the time of the transaction. So anyway, so the issue was, and that person has to know. And so the issue was, did they know that there were mice in there? Because who controls mice getting in the car? They may not have known because they
No.
were hidden. And so that's what it turned on. But it's interesting. When I was looking at documents, I looked at this document I hadn't seen before, because they had sent me things. There's a lot of little tricks that, when you're litigating, they're late producing documents and you
Mm-hmm.
got to like push for it. So you have to definitely, put the energy into kind of
Digging around. Yeah.
digging around and fighting it out and fighting for your client. So I've got these documents close to the trial, and I was like, oh, I got to look at them before I go back. I think I had already I was like, half my case was had already passed. And so one of the documents had charged her for cleaning, and it was a reconditioning fee. And I was like, what is that? And I just looked it up, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, deep cleaning, all this. And
Hmm.
so what happened is that they had told her, yeah, we cleaned the car, we'll get rid of the smell. And then when they returned the car, there were still hairs there. So there were mice and all this, but this really turned on the fact that they charged her for a deep cleaning.
And
And
there
they didn't
was.
really do the deep cleaning. And the case was won on that. But the thing is, it wasn't even over at that point.
Oh
They
boy.
appealed it, and they thought that sometimes it's about wearing you out and wearing you down, but that doesn't work with me. You can't. I mean, I'm not saying I'm like some immortal thing. I just have a lot of conviction and tenacity. So
Good luck, everybody.
I'll keep it to myself. But
Yeah.
we're on the podcast, so
Yeah.
I'll just talk about it.
Yeah.
No, so then they appealed it, and they tried to negotiate, and I was like, no, I'm not negotiating. Like, I know why you're doing this. You're trying to prolong this and wear my client down. I'm not mediating anything. You're going to pay me what is owed.
I love that.
And I mean, I just said that to the mediator because they were asking, do you
Yeah.
want me to? I was like, no.
No.
And we did the appeal. I had to do the work. And during all this time, they have to pay my fees, because in consumer protection, the other side. So if they want to drag it out and they keep losing, that's more attorney's fees they have to pay. And they lost. They lost the
Period.
argument. And they had to end up paying me more in attorney's fees than my client.
Well, look at that.
But it wasn't even over there. They
Oh,
lost the
God.
appeal, and I was trying to collect. And the lawyer wouldn't even come to court, the same lawyer. He had other lawyers come, and the client wouldn't come. To the point they weren't even following the court orders. To the
Oh,
point
my
I had to
goodness.
ask
All
for
that.
the owner of the dealership to get a body attachment, is like an arrest, sort of like get arrested.
Okay.
Because like, you're not even following the court orders to come to court, so you could tell me what your assets are, since you're not paying this judgment. And it got to the point where I filed an application. I said, this is the owner. He has white hair. I described him, probably in his 50s or whatever. And finally the lawyer called me. He was like, all right, you won.
Thank
We'll
you.
get you. Yeah. So that was, that was a long drawn out. And I
But
got
you
to
did
say,
it.
it was fun. I enjoy these
You like
things.
that. Yeah, I
I
can
do.
tell. The
I
smile
like
on your
it.
face says it all.
I like it. So I would say that's a consumer case that I remember. And there's a custody case too that was a little bit outrageous, but it wasn't because of what happened with the other side. But
Okay.
but
No,
anyways, yeah.
that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. I never thought that it would be one about mice in a car, but it's okay. It turned out in favor of your client. So
Yeah, they
thank
still deceived her. They said, "Oh, we're going to clean this out, this smell." Even if the
no,
smell was coming from the mice, there was still hair there. They
exactly.
still didn't do what they said they were
What?
going to
Yeah,
do.
the
And they
service that they
charge her
said.
like, was it $12.95,
Oh my, that is
$1,295?
not a deep cleaning when you use there's
Yeah,
hair.
you're charging for that much and the hair's still there. So
No.
luckily something happened and I found the winning piece of
Good.
evidence. Yeah.
Your tenacity, that's what happened. I love it. And is there anything that I have not touched on that perhaps you would just like to share with our audience or your audience who will potentially hear this? Whether it's about yourself, your business, something personal, your industry.
um I guess what I could say is I never really had a business background. And I knew I really wanted to do this because sometimes, people are not happy with what they're doing. And I want people to know that I do enjoy what I do. Um, Sometimes, there's a lot of admin stuff going on. I wish, hopefully I get somebody to do that so I
Yeah,
could focus more on
your
on
cases.
right on cases and like learning about like, oh, what's going on with this, case or this aspect of the law because the laws are changing, especially I don't know what's
Oh,
going to happen now.
yes. No comment, but
um
yes, I'm with you there.
but I started my own practice right out of law school. It didn't take off until 2020. But yeah, I guess I just want people to know that even though I started in 2012, it really wasn't a functioning, I don't want to say functioning business, but it wasn't like this a full-on business, full-time thing where I was like getting clients on a consistent basis, until 2020. So it took about 8 years, but even during those 8 years, I would have never like closed it up or anything like that. The only time I think that I wasn't sure about what I was gonna do was I was doing the law firm on the side, and then I was doing something called document review.
Okay.
It's very tedious work.
It sounds like it.
Yeah, you're just looking at documents, and it's not what you want to be doing. And so I was doing that, and then it was just I don't know. I had this moment where I thought maybe I'll just go be a brain surgeon. I know it sounds scary. And that's what I was gonna go do.
Wow.
I was gonna go I'd started taking, classes.
Yeah, chemistry,
Yeah, I took
bio.
chemistry, then I got to organic chemistry, which is the most difficult class I've ever
Oh, I
taken.
believe it.
But I loved it. I learned it, and then I understood it. I understood it.
Okay.
But then I met Sandra, right? It's the one who referred me, Sandra Guzman,
Yeah.
and I got into family law, and then I couldn't do both. But it was the only point where I said maybe I should do a career change because it's just not happening. But other than that, like that doesn't mean that I don't like. I didn't want to do what I wanted to do. I just didn't want to do the doc review
Yeah,
to,
no.
to, to have an income. But so even though it ended up coming back to the firm in 2020, um, it started growing, and it's something that I enjoy doing. I really do like where I am. I don't think being a doctor, I'd like the hospital stuff and the
Yeah.
politics. So I'd have to deal with insurance companies. So I
That's
think,
another monster.
between the doctor and the lawyer, I feel like I have more freedom as an attorney. If I want a case, if I want to be creative, I could take it on. If I want to appeal it, because I think, hey, you never know. Maybe the court will disagree with what happened below, and so I don't think I would have that freedom as a doctor.
Yeah.
So I want people to know that I'm in the field that I really do enjoy what I do, like to my core.
Yeah.
So
Well, thanks for sharing that. And where can people find you? Tell us your website, your phone number, Instagram, all that good stuff.
so my Instagram, I don't know the handle. I don't
It's all
have it
good. It's
memorized,
okay.
but it's Valle Law Firm, VALLELAWFIRM. You can Google that. But ValleLawFirm.com is the website, and there may be, I don't know on YouTube what the
It's
handle is,
fine.
but
I'm sure on your website.
yeah, there's like I think little icons.
Perfect. And you
But
can
yeah,
just
and
click those.
I practice in Maryland and DC.
And she
So,
can also take
yeah.
on Spanish cases. She's bilingual.
Mhm.
So
But yeah.
check her out. Well, thank you so much for coming on the
Yeah,
podcast and
thank you
getting
for
to talk.
having me.
Absolutely, anytime.